साथ मैं अदिति त्यागी और लगातार सिर्फ भारत के डिफेंस एक्सपर्ट्स ही नहीं, सिर्फ भारत के एक्सपर्ट्स ही नहीं, मैं दुनिया भर के लोगों की आवाज आप तक पहुंचा रही हूं जो एक्सपर्ट्स हैं। आपको कर्नल मीरी याद होंगी, इजराइल डिफेंस फोर्सेस की, उनकी बात हमने आप तक पहुंचाई थी। और अब मेरे साथ नाउ आई एम जॉइंड बाय ब्रिटिश ऑथर and political commentator Mr. David Vance. Welcome, sir, and thank you so much for taking time out for this interaction. I really appreciate this. Thank you, sir. Mr. Vance, you have made some statements. I'm looking to discuss those statements, but I also need to know how did you arrive at those conclusions? I'll come to your statement about China later. First of all, I'll start with the basics. You said that operation on the part of India against Pakistan was long overdue. Why would you say so?
Well, to start with, I can remember being at the United Nations in Geneva back in 2018. So that's what, 7 years ago? And I attended a human rights conference at which I spoke out and said then that it was my view that Pakistan was a rogue state. The UN should be aware of the fact that it's a rogue state and should take action against it because it constitutes a threat to human life. And obviously, it's a terrorist threat to India. That was in 2018. So what did they do about it? They did nothing about it 7 years ago, and it had been going on before that as well. So the facts, you want facts. The facts of the matter is that the world sits idly by and does nothing. It was important that India did something. So the fact that Operation Sindoor took place when it did, I stand by my assertion that it was indeed overdue. I think, but nonetheless, welcome. It was very welcome that it happened. But I just think that a rogue regime like Pakistan, it doesn't really listen to international reason. It ignores that. The only thing that it respects is power, and that's what India showed. So that's the first question answered.
That's so interesting. You said that that Pakistan doesn't listen to the world, but still the world keeps granting them aid. World
Yes,
keeps helping them out. What
you're
explains
absolutely.
that?
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, and that's such a problem because by providing aid, for example, my country, the UK, has sent hundreds of millions of pounds, British pounds, to Pakistan. It shouldn't spend a penny to Pakistan. Why does it happen though? That's a great question. I think it's because of something that I think others might believe as well. Pakistan, for example, has quite a large diaspora in countries like the UK. And that diaspora, the British government's very aware of that diaspora and it wants to accommodate it. So what it does, it plays nice with Pakistan and other countries as well. Pakistan I don't believe it's good for very much, but one thing it's very good at, propaganda. It's excellent at propaganda. It's got its propagandists all over the place. In the media, for example, very prominent. And so it's for those reasons, I think, that the international aid is given to it. But in giving the international aid to it, it perpetuates the problem. The problem is the regime. We do need regime change in Pakistan, most definitely. And as I say, I argued for that many years ago, and I'm still arguing for it.
Uh, but Mr. Vance, going back to my question, and you mentioned diaspora from Pakistan in huge numbers, and you also mentioned how Pakistan has been able to befool the world
Yes.
through propaganda.
Yep.
When you can understand it, sitting in UK, why is it that the world turns a blind eye? I'm sure India has been providing evidence, and this is not the first time. They have been informing other countries about why the action was taken, what kind of evidence does India have, and yet we get to see IMF granting them $1 billion in no time. And
Yeah, so that.
that's
Yeah.
at a time when they are at war with India.
Yep. That is a very good question. Again, excellent questions. Now, I think the reason is that the Pakistani diaspora, whilst it may be present in countries like the UK, it really behaves as if it's in Pakistan still. It doesn't change. And so it kind of constitutes a threat to the British government. And the British government is scared of it. So because it's scared of it, it's not interested in what Indian people tell it. I've got lots of Indian friends here in the UK, and they ask me the same question. They say, why does the British government not deal with the Pakistani problem in the UK? Never mind the Pakistani problem in Pakistan. And the answer is, I believe that they like the vote. The Pakistan community votes for the Labour Party, which is the government we have at the moment. They enjoy that vote, and they're not going to compromise that. So in other words, they will ignore India. Indian people in the UK integrate, contribute, are very great asset to the UK. Pakistani people are, generally speaking, the opposite. They don't contribute anything. But there's a lot of them, and that's the problem that we've got. But it means that, therefore, the government won't listen to what India says. India needs to have, I think, also perhaps more of a greater voice. It needs to have other people around the world, even if it's people like me, and I'm just a small voice. I'm just, I'm not saying I'm anything more than that, but it needs other people stand up for it as well and speak these truths. And we can do that on social media. We're able to do stuff like that and get lots and lots of impact. And that's all part of what we're going to have to do to get the truth out about Pakistan so that we can deal with the problem.
So, as you mentioned, propaganda, and we have seen our propaganda being run by Pakistan incessantly. And I think they are the only country in the world who, after getting humiliated, still claim victory, and they celebrate that humiliation.
Yeah.
When it comes to propaganda war, where do you think India lags behind? Because at the end of the day, it's a war of narratives. And I'm asking you because I really want an honest opinion on this. When you see the way India presented facts with evidence, and Pakistan couldn't produce even a single evidence, and they're just talking, and their source of information is social media. I can't imagine a defense minister quoting from social media and claiming victory and claiming damages to the enemy country. That was just unimaginable for someone like me. So, where does India lag behind when it comes to international narratives?
Yeah, I think. I think, to be honest, we see very similar situation in Gaza. We see the words of Hamas are taken at face value. Whatever they see, it's true. And in Pakistan, it's the same. Whatever the Pakistani authorities say, the international media seem to assume that it's true. And you're right, India has produced the evidence. I mean, how do I know factually that Operation Sindoor has been a success? Well, I know that because Pakistan said it was a failure. That's how I know. Pakistan will say the opposite of what actually happens. So there's all the proof you need to see. Plus, of course, we've seen lots of good detail, military detail given openly by India. And so the only explanation for why the international community doesn't seem to go with this, and this includes the United States, very disappointingly, is that they're playing this broader geopolitical game because they do know that right behind Pakistan, in the shadows, is China. They know that. And I think that's what causes them to back off, which is the wrong response from them, by the way. But I think that's why it happens.
As you mentioned China, and that is part of my set of questions that I have for you.
Yep.
You just mentioned that US is aware that it's China who's using Pakistan as proxy. So what stops US? Because at the end of the day, China is challenging US.
Yeah.
What stops US, despite knowing, acting against Pakistan? That is something I'm still trying to get. I'm trying to make sense.
Well, might it be because at this point in time in 2025, the US and China are trying to do a trade deal and trying to get the tariff structure sorted out between them? And does the US put that as a greater priority than trying to support India. Maybe it does. I mean, the other thing in all of this is that obviously Pakistan is a nuclear power. It has nuclear competence and capability. And I think that also was used then by Pakistan to scare off the likes of the United States. But I mean, I thought that President Trump and Jerry VP President Vance, there's a good name. I thought they would have had the common sense to recognize that it was in their interest, a US interest, Western interest, to support what India was doing against Pakistan and indirectly against China. China is a global predator. I mean, Donald Trump understands, he knows that, I think. So here's a global predator propping up Pakistan. India is trying to deal with Pakistan. And so why would you not support India? And I can only think that there are people even within this new US regime who don't understand what's happening in the region. It's either ignorance, stupidity, or cowardice. Pick one.
Mr. Vance, I'm just curious. Please don't take my question otherwise. I was watching a clip in which President Trump said that both the countries were headed towards nuclear war. So if the most powerful person being told that a country like Pakistan is threatening to use nuclear threat, I would rather. It's a very I'm this question. I'm assuming if I'm the world power, I would take a step back and I would think this man is a threat, not to India, but to the world. And this person is threatening me with nuclear capabilities.
Yep.
So
Yep.
instead of, and US could have, they have the certain leverage over Pakistan. They provide them with F-16. They help them with different sort of grants. They are behind IMF package. So there's so many things that US controls, and that allows Pakistan to provide bread and butter to their people. Why
Yep.
is it that, okay, fine, I see President Trump talking about it, but I'm kind of disappointed. I feel disappointed that the most powerful person, quote unquote, couldn't fix someone who was trying to blackmail him.
Yes.
What are the compulsions?
Yeah, well, I mean, you're exactly right. Because the United States has the competencies in all sorts of areas, like you've mentioned. For example, the IMF loan. It's basically the US that calls the shots in these areas. So the US could financially put the pressure on Pakistan, let's say, to do that. But what worries me is because the US stepped in to try and stop what was happening because of the blackmail from Pakistan. What happens is, just as a lesson of life, if someone is blackmailing you and you appease them, they will continue to do it. They won't stop just because you've appeased. They'll come back for more and more. And this is the lesson of Pakistan. I honestly think it's been doing it for so many years and getting away with it. Now, the only hope we have is that the Washington regime will, and hopefully India can work on it to inform it even better, to understand that it is crucial. That India's geopolitical location is crucial for the whole world. This is my argument, you see. I think India sits in such an important area, and the West should completely align with India, because you've got China to cope with, you've got Pakistan to cope with. You've got a lot of things in that region, but they're all issues where I think we are aligned with India. And so when India does something like this, I don't want to hear President Trump saying, "Oh, I've got a ceasefire." I don't want to hear that. I've got a ceasefire. That's not the right result. You should be putting maximum pressure on the blackmailer, which is Pakistan.
Mr. Vance, I'll come to the point where you said that this operation was required for the civilization. I think the most powerful line that I have heard about this operation is that, I'll come back to this, but why is it that we don't see the synergy or the alignment with India? Is it because India is a fourth largest economy at the moment and headed towards being the third largest economy in a couple of years' time? Is it India's growing clout? At the same time, India demonstrated the weapons which were made in India, how they
Yeah.
delivered in testing situation in this war. So that arms war, the competition, do you think all these factors are also driving this, or would you just put it to the fact that India hasn't been able to push the narrative that India should be doing?
No, no, no. Listen, I think it's everything you've just said. Those are all relevant factors as well. These things are rarely simple. They're rarely black and white, but it is a combination of all of the above and one other thing. And the one other simple truth is that we have a rogue nuclear state in the form of Pakistan. That has not gone away. And that's why I celebrated Operation Sindoor, because I think that it did succeed in damaging that rogue state. But quite honestly, and I'll say it, I'd like to see Operation Sindoor 2.0, the next one, because Pakistan needs to be denuclearized. It needs that threat taken away from it. And that's not just for the sake of India. It's for the sake of the world. That's why I made that statement that you mentioned at the beginning, that for me, this is, it's like civilization should stand with India. Any sensible, civilized country should realize that the heavy lifting the Prime Minister Modi and the Indian government is doing, it's extraordinary work. And so, the West should see that. But sometimes, as we see in other situations, it's complicated. We see it in Syria at the moment. Some very strange decisions by the United States in Syria. We certainly see it in the Middle East. And I've been a big President Trump supporter since 2015. Right? I'm very disappointed in the US response to what I've seen in the last couple of weeks. And I only hope that they can change. They can understand that the importance is to deal once and for all with this rogue nuclear state, failed state, and terrorist state, which is what Pakistan is.
What impressed you the most about the Operation Sindoor?
The accuracy of it, the precision of it, the determination of it, and actually the way in which we got to see. I mean, India was very open in a very short time about what had happened. I mean, obviously, in the immediacy of a war scenario, there's all kinds of stuff and you don't know exactly what's happening. But I think it became very clear very quickly that what exactly had happened. And as I say, the ultimate proof of it, the reason I believe what India is telling me is because the Pakistanis told me that's not what happened. So they instantly realized, yeah, this has been a success. I can see the impacts, and obviously it's tricky because you're dealing with, as I say, a nuclear competency power. But Operation Sindoor was really good, and I think it shows, actually, if I may say, that India is a world leader. Prime Minister Modi is a global leader. He's showing strength, initiative, and actually, he didn't really need the US to get involved. India can deal with these issues to a large degree by itself, if it needs to, but it doesn't need the US interfering, is what is possibly the issue as well. So so Operation Sindoor was good. It showed India stepping up a gear, I think, even further. And but I think India can probably go even beyond that. Pakistan will not, as we've seen already in the past couple of days, they're going to try and rebuild. They're going to try and rearm. It doesn't change. That regime must be toppled and the nuclear capabilities removed, and then it can be dealt with. But that's going to require a lot of work from India and lots of support from people from other nations around the world of goodwill.
Mr. Vance, how is this operation being perceived by the West? You are sitting in UK. You have the network all over. How is it being seen?
Well, let me tell you, the biggest news organization we have in the UK, the BBC, pretty much completely ignored it. So zero reporting on the issue. Instead, all we got was a false equivalency being put about, oh, Pakistan's bad, India's bad, or but beyond that, nothing. So, but nowadays, where do we get our news? Well, we get our news through the power of social media, and so the social media war, which is another important one, I think we have been having a degree of success in portraying the success of Operation Sindoor, and along with some very good Indian friends that I've gotten to know here in the UK, I've been very happy to work with them and use the information that they're providing me, which comes from India, obviously, to try and then get this message out to other British people that, hey, look at what's happened in between India and Pakistan, and let's get behind India because it's in India's interest and it's in our British interest as well. We should do this. So the mainstream media can't be trusted in the UK. I mean, they don't want to know about any of the details, but that doesn't mean that the truth can't get out there, and that's what hopefully we're trying to do here as well.
As a British political commentator, I need to know from you, how should India proceed from here when it comes to Pakistan?
Yeah, double down, double down on what India has done. So, as I say, Operation Sindoor, good. Sindoor 2.0 is what we need. In addition to that, we need to see India use its full diplomatic powers, which is difficult, I know, but to work on administrations in Washington, in London, maybe even in Brussels. I don't know about Brussels. It's difficult, but certainly in the UK and in the US, and make the case, as you rightly observe. Especially the US. The US has the economic power to define Pakistan, and it's got it can do it. So I would direct most Indian diplomacy to Washington. I think that the way forward with Pakistan is for India to work closely with the United States. After all, the Vice President of the United States is married to an Indian lady. And I think there should be maximum diplomatic efforts made to get the United States to understand the complexity that India faces with Pakistan, and to get more understanding from the US. I think that's the important thing, because the US has the power, combined with India, to finally bring down this rogue nation, this Chinese cat's paw, which is what Pakistan is. It needs the combination of the US and India, ideally, to do it. But let's be honest, India has demonstrated through Operation Sindoor that it can do it itself if necessary. But it would be better to do it in conjunction with the United States, and I hope that it does.
And as you mentioned at the start of the interview, that Pakistan being used as a proxy by China,
Yep.
how should India deal with China, and not just India? How should the world deal with China? And I would also like to discuss here the axis that is formed by Turkey,
Yep.
China, and Pakistan.
Yeah, and that's a real axis of evil, actually. Turkey, China, and Pakistan. You're quite right. And but it's surely in the interests of the West to understand that these are all bad actors. They do not have the best interests of, certainly, India at heart, but they don't have the best interests of the broader West at heart either. So the very fact that these three nations are all linked, as you point out, is reason enough for the West to stand with India against them. Because if it doesn't, then, I mean, they will just keep using Pakistan. That's the truth of the matter. China couldn't care less about Pakistan, but then neither does the Pakistan government. So you got that problem.
Actually, my question is, how would you counter this axis? India would do what all it takes to stop Pakistan from sponsoring terrorism,
Yeah,
targeting innocent civilians. India would do all that takes, but uh, how
listen.
would world, there has to be a global alliance, I guess. The world community
Yeah,
also needs to do their part. They need to play their part in this.
yeah, but that's the point. There does need to be a global alliance, and it is important that India does what it can to 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 advance that global alliance. But I think that the key aspect of the global alliance is with the United States, because you will not get the support of the Europeans because they're useless. They're completely enthralled to Pakistan, so that's not going to happen. But the US is different, and the United States has the economic power. This is what we've talked about. It's got the economic power in different ways. Some of them obvious, some of them less obvious through the IMF, for example, to put real pressure on on Pakistan. And actually, if it wants, it can put real pressure on China as well. So the really important issue or area is this US India link. But I think the UK could potentially play some sort of a role in maybe helping bridge between the US and India. But as I said, in the final analysis, ideally a globalist alliance against this axis of evil would be good. That would be best. But the next best thing is India just does what India wants to do. So sometimes you've got to do that. You're looking, if the alliance isn't going to be there, what's your next best move? Well, the next best move is what we've just seen with Operation Sindoor. So I think Prime Minister Modi always does things very calmly, very considered, very powerfully. And I'm sure the next stage will be considered. And however it works out, the main thing is to realize that we have to defang Pakistan from its nuclear competencies and remove the terrorist threat from Pakistan. And if that annoys Turkey and if that annoys China, tough.
As you use the word tough, before I let you go, there is no denying that the Indian armed forces have shown Pakistan its place. How much of how much credit would you give to the political leadership, in the
Oh,
sense that armed forces have delivered, but to show that kind of political will also takes a lot of courage, a lot of heart,
yeah,
and to hit Pakistan where it hurts the most. So, how much credit would
absolutely.
you give to political leadership?
Yeah, well, you see, I think India is very fortunate to have Prime Minister Modi. I think it's a great blessing on India, and it's an advantage to the rest of the world. A weaker Prime Minister might not have done Operation Sindoor. I think we've seen courage we've seen it at the political level. We've seen strength at the political level, and we've seen that at the military level as well. And that's great because that shows us that India is a global uh, political and military power. And that should send a message to Washington as well, actually. India will do it itself if it has to, but if it can get an alliance, then that's even better. So I salute Prime Minister Modi, as I have done for some years now. I salute him and those around him, as well as the Indian Special Forces who carried out the operation. I think bravery and strength is to be admired.
And do you think there would be more buyers for Indian weapons now, as their efficiency has been proved in a real war-like situation, as we had just a few days back against Pakistan? So that
Yeah,
helps India as well in terms of selling its weapons,
it
that too made in India.
absolutely does. Yeah, made in India is now seen as a mark, as an endorsement, a mark of great professional competence when it comes to the military side of things as well. So I think it's all evidence that India is a growing economic power. It has not reached its full potential yet. It's getting there, but being able to that weaponry showed its place 100%. It showed that the Chinese defenses that are given to Pakistan couldn't stop India. So I think yes, this is another advantage that Operation Sindoor has demonstrated, namely the military strength that India now has. And sometimes strength has to be demonstrated politically, but sometimes it has to be demonstrated in the battlefield, and that's what we've seen.
Thank you, Mr. Vance, for your insights, for your time,
Thank you.
and I really appreciate this. Thank you, and take
Thank
care.
you. Cheers.
Cheers.